It's fun.
I'll just put a record in so we will have to draw some learnings afterwards for people who can't join. But thank you so much, Federico. I pass to you to start this beautiful session.
All right, thank you, Max. Well, first of all, I need to introduce myself. I thought in my first point of today, I mean, I'm not going to share a presentation with you, it's just going to be me talking. So bear it with me. You can, of course, stop me and ask me things or also add your own, it's very welcome your opinion or your judgment about what I'm going to say. So find a way to stop me, please, because I will try to start with a story. And a story, when you have to introduce yourself, for me, is to say where I come from. It's always been like that. I'm Italian, you can say from my accent. And I think I've studied philosophy many, many years ago, and I was there many times when things happen because I'm a bit old, let's say. Not as old as a baby boomer, but old enough to have been there when there was no internet yet. So the topic of today that I want to bring to your attention is this idea of art-based innovation. That I mean, I've been part of the development of these ideas in many ways. I consider myself a philosopher still, but I'm mostly active into um, development of projects, design, art projects. I make my little money by art projects and European projects in which I've been working till 2 years ago, 2 years and a half ago. So this, I think, cuts a bit of things. If you want to learn about the way I'm active in the space, you can check the site of the foundation that a group of us being involved in these things have created some years ago. It's called Trasformatorio. I'm going to send it, of course, in the links. So when we talk about art-based innovation, it's a very tricky field because everybody hears what they want to hear. Often you talk about art-based innovation, people hears based innovation, so here's innovation. Innovation is good in some circles. But the most important part is what is art, what art I'm talking about when I say art-based. So I have to say a bit where I come from. I come from the 90s in Italy, the scene of the 90s in Italy, that was periphery according to what the technology was developing at the time, was rather peripheric. There was an hacker scene, hacker in the sense of that time. So hacker means somebody that tries to understand things, touching them and unmounting them and entering where it's not really the case to be. And this scene was also highly politicized. Highly politicized because we were young, we were politicized, and we had a lot of fantasy. So let's say I consider myself part of the free software movement. I was one of the organizer of the first Linux meeting in Rome in '93. But I was never part of a scene. I was always a sort of hopeful monster, an anarchist that appears, does something, and disappears, and never really being known for anything. This also in my art practices. I'm mostly unknown. Nobody knows me, and it's okay. I have not done anything fantastic. At the time, the reference was immediatism artistically. And this is important in the case of art-based innovation for a notion that is very important and is a notion that has two heads. One is the art that is made to live in society. And from Hakim Bey, we learned the tactics of entering the discourse in the media at the time. And a phenomena that then became in the media, Italy, Maybe some of you have met this kind of discourse. It's a pre-internet area, early internet area, so a bit far away. So art was something to be done into the society with a disruptive kind of attitude. Not necessarily punk, everything is corrupted anyway, but sort of constructive. Your society sucks, we can build a better one. Maybe you recognize some some ideas that are also very well known by all of us here. Another thing that was immensely important at the time was the free software movement, that most of my friends would understand from a perspective that was Marxist. So concept working through some learning, some techniques, some knowledge that is good to develop stuff, to invent things, and without appropriation of the tools that you need to, you cannot be controlled because nobody can own the tools you need to produce your work with. So you also, if you keep this present, you understand also lots of different ley lines in this idea of art that is not only European, but emerges in a lot of places nowadays. So this was a very long preamble. I go to talk a bit about two cases that I want to pose for your attention that happened very recently in my life, and that gives a certain idea on what is to be speaking about today, that is how to build community and do art innovation in the real world, and why, with what tools, if we arrive till there. So these two instruments have a different story, but common origins. One is Le Grand Jeu, that is a setup for a game to be done with anybody, so in a very open environment, not only cyberneticists, not only hackers, not only white males, not only whatever you want to classify or construct upon. So it's a game to be done with people sitting around the table. Doesn't need technology, it's just goodwill. Why this comes from art practices? Well, the art practices I'm referring to are art practice that construct situations, and it's something very well explained by Hakim Bey, for example, but that dates back to the situationism and avant-garde art of the 20th century. So you construct a framework that is possibly open and non-manipulative, and this is very important, in which communication can happen peer-to-peer. How I came to the idea of game is as the following story. I was working for a European funded project. So if somebody has a question, open your video and do this sign to me, because I cannot watch the chat by now. Or Max, you just make a sign because I see you. So I was in this project, and my boss at the time came to me and he said, Federico, you are the creative person. Can you please find a very fast way to explain everybody what is the connection between money and democracy? It's not an easy question. What is the connection between money and democracy? It's a deep philosophical problem, let's say, or a deep philosophical question. And it brings me very much into a sort of rabbit hole that was incredible. And for 6 months, I've been rambling on this idea until I passed with my bike in front of a games shop in Amsterdam, where I live. And I get the idea, but I learned capitalism from Monopoly. I was a child, I was playing Monopoly, and I learned what capitalism is, in essence. So maybe it should be a game. Right. And how you make this game? Well, you create a situation in which the game can be designed. You bring some pieces together, a nice crowd of people that has knowledge, and you create a game. This is how Le Grand Jeu was born in 2016. Since then, we used it in many situations to bring a discourse to a community and also to put the whole community in a situation in which they feel free to express what they like to express. That is very important, because in my experience, and probably also in yours, there is this moment in which, in a big, good, well-founded project, a lot of experts get together around the table and decide what to design, right? Whatever is your experience, I don't know. My experience was that it was mostly agile type of design, in which the user cases, they were, made with personas that were mostly invented, and for sure they were not at the table to be embarked with. They were not in the same room. So this, I found a limit of this kind of methodology. And what is the equivalent in art methodology? Well, the equivalent in the art I'm part of would be to have a play and just show the play to critics, or have a play without audience. Let's put it like that. So you create a play, you put together dancers, musicians, a storyteller, a story, etc., and you play it in an empty stage. Even another big problem that could be also said is that you try to embody a problem that is only yours. And this is the other side of this talk today. How to create a situation in which you don't speak to yourself, like I'm doing now practically, because I don't see you. So in the practice of, let's say, contemporary theater, it's not something that is usually done. Now, how I understood this, it's interesting. I was working in 2004, 2005, in a joint development project with Philips Design on a thing about generative art. And they had at the time a big laboratory with a lot of funding to test their commercial products of design in all fields of electronic and new society. It was called the Home Lab. The Home Lab had cameras all over. The idea was the Big Brother. So you could have people testing the users, testing the appliances in a situation that was controlled and was measurable. Well, main criticism was that it wasn't a real house. Everything was a stage. It was a place inside a big office building. Nobody could sleep there. Nobody could really live there and try the appliances. But it was a very well staged effect. But at that time I said, well, look, but there is a big source of information that is from our practice of media arts, in which we do site-specific work. And we could create the same type of effect into a real house with a real house. Is the way you observe the situation. The situation cannot be taken out from the discourse. And this is something I find back in the analysis of many of the projects that I hear about in the space of that we're talking about, of let's say digital economy for communities, in which what we are observing is out of the situation that we want to design for. This is a limit. But from artistic practices, though, we can see a lot of examples in which this is not true. And we can learn a lot of methodological escamotage to allow us to design with the complexity. So, for Le Grand Jeu, it's an open source game. You can go to the website, play it, take down everything, also the way the cards are designed, play it, and eventually let me know how it went. But it's considered to be a tool to create a situation in which everybody can participate to the discourse, and from that start to design together in the field. So with the people that you would not really find easy to talk with. The other example that I would like to propose you, and I think I'm in the time that I thought I would take, so I don't have to go too fast. You can still stop me, and of course I'm not going to go over 1540, so we have time for question talks and problematics. Second example was another European funded project in which I was tasked to invent a ex post. So after the project was drawn, designed, and also founded, fortunately, I was asked to be design a sort of courseware for incubating 16 companies that had ideas into DLT, digital ledger technology or decentralized economy ideas. So companies that had proposed an idea for blockchain that had to be designed human-centric, that were founded by the EU, and I was tasked to invent something for them to do to make it human-centric. This is the real world. I mean, not something that is designed. You don't find always yourself in something that is designed to work in a certain way. You find yourself in a war. Actually, I should not say that. In a sort of chaos, and from chaos you try to propose a line of order. So I took my best shot from this occasion, and I tried to organize an experience for these companies to test the three main things they needed for being so-called human-centric. One, to design ethically. Two, to understand the limits and the impact of their design into real-life situation. And third, to test their commitment and their union and their, internal structure in a process that was funded so they had money to live for 1 year, but was also committing them to work for many more years as a company, a small company in the system. I had no connections with those that choose these companies and these projects. So, you just get what you get. It was very nice example. I made some mistakes, of course, in the beginning, but little by little, we went to one important moment that was to bring everybody into the real world and make them do MVP in 1 week. That was not connected with the one they were working on, but to make it done in the real world. This project was called Ledger, was an NGI Ledger project. It had a good result, but then in the meantime, the structure I was collaborating with collapsed, and the environment became extremely toxic, and I had to go away. So I don't know how it went at the end, but we have some videos that you can go and see. They can be found from Trasformatorio, and a lot of learning from that process. I made it available on the website, so you can eventually find it out. Was the text of some speeches that connected this methodology that we used there with some ideas that are rather deep in how to grow open free software ethical projects in the space of digital ledger, decentralized ledger technology. Sorry, I always say digital instead of decentralized. I don't know why. Must be that I'm old. So these are the two cases that are part of my experience, and they also big part of my problem. And that's the second part of the talk that I want to start to put down now, because it's connected to certain ideas that are deeply philosophical and are part of my practice of human being in this space, but also to some real problems that I see emerging in most of the projects I've been seeing developing in this space, that deal with community, that deal with the economics of the community, and with the law of the legal space in which these projects are sometimes thrown, and with whom they go to fight a certain point. So I'm going to to do an enumeration here of some of my observation in this sense. But it all starts from one realization that I had really recently. So we did the Trasformatorio. Trasformatorio is mostly a laboratory, a living lab, temporary, done site-specific, in which I bring a lot of artists to work in a certain context, a little bit like I did with these companies in the Ledger project. So we go into a very small village on the top of a mountain, and we start with observation. The situation is set like Trasformatorio is coming to this place, so something is going to happen. People arrives from usually from abroad, and is going to be the guest of the village. There is no money involved, so people comes and co-produce the Trasformatorio with the village that puts together food and lodging for us. There is an exchange, but it's not really clear what the exchange will be. There is a day that is set for a comeback, and so presentation, final presentation, and that it's not mandatory for participants, so participants can also decide not to present. And another element that is very important is that we start with observing, and we are going to use everything that we can find in the place to be transformed. So the idea is that art is about the transformation of findings. You will not find this if you study art all over the place. There is no general understanding that this is the scope of art. Like there is no general understanding on the fact that art has to be used or can be used to cure or to act in society as a mirror. These are all things that are, ideas that I share, but not with everybody, of course. So Trasformatorio has this characteristic. We arrived to this village, we studied, we left some art, and we realized that we were being used by some people of the village, knowing or not knowing, as a vector of gentrification. And the fact that really left me very much puzzled was the fact that, of course, was not wished by us, was not wished by them. It was a village of 120 people, so would probably not even succeed, but it was seen as the only outcome, feasible outcome of a very deep exploration of your roots and your wishes that we did in these 2 weeks. So this was a thing that brought me to the understanding that a very important work has to be done on the imagination of a different world and to spread it a bit around. That's why I resonated so much with the idea of this gathering that is about pro-social or let's say a utopia that can be used to create a reality in the right way, in the right direction. In the direction that I resonate more with, there is a direction of cooperation and friendship and humanity, and not of the opposite. Though, let's go to okay, I recapitulate here. I come from free software, art, and innovation in that sense, in a social sphere, right? There are some practices that are very important that I learned in that context that can be learned and shared also in a context that is more technical. And it's probably the place where I see more friction between very fantastic ideas and a lot of effort in designing tools and the moment in which these tools can be appropriated by real people in the real world. For real people, I mean not that we are aliens, or it's just that I mean that at the same table there should be everybody, or wish to sit anyone that is living in the space. No, and also an idea that I really care about should be the same place where you have your dinner with everybody. No, the social dinner. Everybody could sit, right? It's not. I don't believe in high tables. So this is me. I mean, I know that in this space there are people that are more structured hierarchically, but I really feel that in a peer-to-peer economy, all participants should be taken in account as participants and as members, right? Not to make a peer-to-peer economy that has the need of controllers and infrastructure of control that are not being known or discussed is a bit strange to me. So it's a question of design, of course. Now, if this is clear, make me a gesture, something like, yeah, okay, thank you, Max, and thank you, Peter, as well. If this was more or less clear, then what do I have to offer? Well, I have to offer some notions that I have constructed with others in collaborations. So it's just few notions, but mostly I really ask you as participants and active people in this space to help me to understand better and to see if these kind of notions are useful or not in your case, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take a responsibility to talk now, to present the problem, but feel free afterwards to come to me in all possible ways with your ideas about it and experience, especially, because what we're looking for here, it's mostly the space of wisdom. I see some kind of sound like planning poker. Well, you like paradoxes as I do, so it's fine. You are referring to regarding the unspoken controls. Okay, unspoken controls I'm speaking of. One of the most relevant things that I see in Western psychology, especially when it's talking about into the social space, is the idea of framing everything as problems, and therefore to propose every action as a solution to a problem. This is an important example of ideology. If you frame some kind of phenomena as problems, solutions, you are into a certain type of ideology, so you better be aware. I make you an example that for me is not a problem, is migration. Migrants are people for me. To frame it as a problem is already an action of dehumanization, in my opinion, of course. And therefore, a lot of complex issues of our society, when they are seen as problem, implicitly puts the framework, the agenda, into finding a solution. So asking for expertise or for actions in the legal sphere that are, in my view, more keen to oppression than to enlightenment. On this topic, I strongly suggest to read the people like Paulo Freire that offer a different view of this in the realm of education, especially. So how to create an education that is not oppressive. But I tend to personally to propose this with an example that comes from mathematics, because I mean, I'm not as I'm more individualistic than Paulo Freire, probably. So mathematics, we have let's say the phenomenon of chaos, and let me just put it like this. Let's say complexity and chaos are two different aspects that arise from feedback loops into dynamical systems, and that tell us mostly that some kind of things cannot be forecasted or foreseen, even in deterministic systems. But this is not the space to go deep in it. And I am no mathematician myself, studied the question a long time, but it's one of the reasons. So one of the reasons is simply gnoseological, why you cannot put, it's not good to put everything into problems solving. I have another question. Yeah, well, art has very, very strict criteria of judgment, especially when it's done into the open world. You have the attendance of public, you have the wish of them to participate or not to the process. You have both qualitative and objective observation you can do. In an artistic process that is intended to also to give insight on innovation, you of course can put all kind of KPIs, both qualitative from an anthropological perspective or quantitative from a more traditional economic perspective. So you can count the amount of participation, the amount of money arisen by a play or whatever. Actually, these KPIs are really the type of KPIs that are requested by, for example, NGI European calls. All right, thank you all that you start to, you help me also to focus the discourse. I would like to just to touch another three things that three big environments that are important when we talk about cultural, social, technological kind of ideas on which is useful to use art methodology. Art in the sense I was talking about. I'm not talking about Jeff Koons or pop art. I'm talking about avant-garde, activism kind of type of awareness-based art that you find in media art mostly. In my field is media art and theater, and you find also in certain type of structured art forms like filmmaking, for example. But I mean, if there are questions, I can go deeper on that, but I would prefer to stick on some things I've first-hand observation about. So in community practices, I've seen when art is developed inside the community that you are targeting, there is a lot of things you can learn, of course, from your experience there. The first one is the amount of top-down ideas we have about small marginalized communities and how they can be fake. Actually, the first thing you notice is that whatever you bring there will not going to work, but they work. The community works together. So you are bringing something that can also not be valuable for them. And you have to, to put yourself in a condition of observation without judgment to be accepted. And this is something very, very important to say to projects that have as a condition, commons related projects as a condition, the bringing to somebody the perfect tool to do something. These kind of tools, to be ethical, can only be co-designed inside the community, and you must have some emotional and economical stake and take legal responsibility. This is what I learned, and I mean, I'm open to any type of discussion about it, but it's, for me, very important. Second notion is that scalability is not a given, and sometimes it's not even necessary, especially in peer-to-peer projects. An example of these are projects that have been developed in the realm of open source software, have been developed by one person and still are vital for the whole ecosystem. So the project maybe doesn't need a governance system, but it's still vital. And everything that happens into the human sphere has to be considered at least vital for one person, the person that does it. So treated with a little bit of care. Then, of course, there are many other things that I found that are important, that I found just because the main scope of the research was to try to find ways to link the way innovation is founded with the way culture is founded and made in both ways. So that was my struggle, and I talk about it with passion just because it was my struggle to find a way to do innovation that is really innovative in the sense of that is important for me of fairness and universality and access and leads us to a more sustainable planet. Secondly, it's very important for me to think about things that have a sort of ethics that is localized and a way to impact the world that is, let's say, scalable, but more as a fractal than as a pyramid. So that has an impact on infrastructure way. And I close here. I think I wrap it up. I have lots of other things that I would like to say, but I leave it to your question or your curiosity. Please, also your experience. If you have experience in art led innovation or stories, please share it with me. I think I would love to start from here for the last 20 minutes.
My first instinct, as far as like art-led innovation that I might have experienced personally, is, and maybe it's super duper simple, but making websites. And I know someone just joined recently who does UI UX, but it's interesting the cross between functionality, developing something while still making it pleasing or interesting or expressing something, and sort of what comes out of that accidentally sometimes. But I wonder if there's a difference, kind of like what you're saying with what stake you have in the project. If you're doing this for yourself and you have a commercial interest or a cultural interest into what you're building, versus if you're just building it for a client, sort of the difference in outcomes and something special emerges or not. But this is a wild concept, so I need to think a little.
Oh, thank you very much, Adam. This is a very good start of thinking. I'm totally agreed. Any observation in that space is useful. I remember once that for various reasons I was in a big discussion, sort of, it was under a tent in a big festival, the Chaos Computer Club. And there were two famous people having a discussion to which, we normal unknown were only allowed to pose questions, even if it was 9 a.m. under a tent, in this kind of very anarchistic freak kind of situation. And then for various reasons, they were talking about trolling and how to avoid, what do you do if there is trolling into your this space, somebody comes and shows his ass to troll us, something like that. What do you do? Are you allowed to be a censor or a moderator, or you need moderation? And of course, there was all the problem of cultural, being, are you allowed to moderate? What is the moderator to be? It has to be a white male or a black woman, just to make it very stupid. I tell it to you like this very stupid kind of discussion for me. I'm sorry for using the word stupid, but we understand each other. So I saw the thing in that moment like what is trolling? Trolling is a certain kind of frustration that I had because I was only allowed to pose questions, and actually I posed the question, it was ignored, so I was upset. by this kind of structural pyramid. Didn't like it. And another was, okay, trolling, what it is. Trolling is being frustrated and make a bad joke. In that case, I did it because a guy was posing me tea and I said, oh, this tea sucks, and everybody laughed. The fact that it was not allowed by the interface in a thing is that everybody laughed and nobody gave a fuck. And they all went on with the discussion. The discussion disappeared, right? By itself. The laughter was the way to make the discussion disappear. This, for me, was an interesting insight in how bulletin board systems are designed. They are designed in a way in which the bullshit that you say out of frustration remains. Right? And there is no way to express frustration. Okay. This is just an observation, but it shows, I pose it to you because it shows a type of methodology that is really comes by, it's very common. I don't know where it comes from, but it's very common in art scenes, especially in theater, where you always act or enact something in a context that, as much prepared it can be, always can explode, especially if you're doing activism or activism in general, in which you're actually trying to disrupt something that is happening for your reason, you know. Sometimes this disruption comes also in a way that is very unpleasant. You know, you ruin the party. And yeah, we could go on this very long, but I hope that this example tells you what is the type of connection with innovation. Because, I mean, for example, you are designing a system of tracking for avoiding trolling or avoiding spamming, and you didn't thought about this laughter, you know? So yeah, it's just an example. My suggestion is always to have the co-design process of something made by the biggest amount of people that is available to you, the biggest typology of people that is available to you, and make really a point in finding a situation in which everybody feels entitled to speak. This goes to the game. I found that one of my solutions was Le Grand Jeu, because what I offer you is to sit around the table and have fun for 2 hours with some instruments that then I'm going to explain how they map into the realm of this technocratic thinking about infrastructure with the blockchain and blah, blah, blah. But you already knew how to use it because you've been playing with it. You know that you can be part in using them, and you can refer to that as a language to speak together that is not technical. So this is the main idea behind Le Grand Jeu, but I'm sure that it's everywhere there is people doing similar stuff. And I'm really wishing to learn, especially ways to avoid this tragedy of the commons to a very specific problem in which the thing that blocks these projects is often the way they approach community building. It can be that to be part of the community, you feel you need to know too much, or that is too risky. I make another example. If I'm going into a village with a very nice project about opening all the information about their property, because the village is going is losing population and is practically disappearing, and they accept to loosen up the information about who owns what. What happened in our case, fortunately, before we opened this information, is that there were already people that just watching Facebook were going there to try to buy property, to resell it to a higher value in a matter of couple of years by speculating on some laws about how to get money to renovate places that are wasting. So sometimes I'm really, I feel the creeps when I see some projects that go into a community to help them out. Also because it's a typical way to appropriate yourself of that community. And this is, I'm sorry to say, is a characteristic very much connected to the Western way of thinking.
I would like to add a few thoughts so it can maybe direct more of the interesting insights from your work. So from my experience, like what you mentioned about how you work in these labs and everything, it reminded a bit about the perspective of system constellation, is the correct name, which basically, it gives, it supports design by giving this insight, I haven't seen like specifically design develop, but it for sure enriches our understanding of the situation. And one thing where I'm like struggling a bit is that one of the designs behind this Unconference was that, I had this really nice experience of the Unconference in the physical space. It's so way richer, it's like so many great things happen, you can't even track, but here in the digital space, everything is so like normalized, specialized, and everything. So maybe you can even when you tell about this workshop, is the workshop we play like at the table, but have you seen any interesting approaches to designing digital spaces so we can have this?
Thank you for your question, Max. It's really pinpointing one of the other big insight I had recently on this problem. For example, Zoom, the platform we're using now to try to have a discourse, is good. It's okay. But to have a dialogue is very difficult. And it's a design thing. There is a filter that cuts off all the noises. So you don't feel when you have that moment in my talk in which you are entitled to enter and say, yes, and, or no, I think something else. It's not a system for dialogue. So it's very difficult to enact a dialogue on this platform. And technically, this is done with a filter on the sound. So what we did? Well, we designed something different. Actually, my friend August Black in the United States designed something different together with us. And it's a sort of radio show which you can enter and you are all with the hands on the mixer. Everybody can design. You have your headphones. You don't see the other person, but you can hear the music and the voice. And everybody has access to the mixer. So it comes out a flow that is important and your ears are in the flow. This idea that is an idea that I motivated from August became into the space of Trasformatorio in 2021 because we were supposed to go into the same village, but we couldn't because of COVID. So only some of us could go there and the other had to do their art practice from remote. So we split the laboratory in two parts. One was done in absentia without the people and one in presenza with the people. And we tried to experiment exactly on ways to create the flow and the presence using digital means in that space, using the experience of a community radio that we brought during COVID. I mean, COVID, we did what we knew. So we did a streaming community radio, which everybody is allowed to take a spot and do his radio, and you are allowed to listen. Of course, this is a practice that is very well documented in permaculture circle, which you have the lesson of, staying 5 minutes just listening without saying anything to somebody else. As a good practice, in my experience in software development, in a particularly open, liberated space, etc., was of oppression. It was impossible to have a practice like that for 5 minutes. With community radio, we managed to have 1 hour of listening collectively to somebody, what he had to say. It was very close. Now, I think this observation open, and this is what art should do as a methodology, they open space for innovation automatically. You have the user case, observation of a real phenomena, approach to design some kind of alternative, and all this outside of the type of pressure that problem solving gives. Problem solution framework is a framework. It's useful for many things, but it's not the only one. If there are other observations, I still have 5 minutes. So other observation, otherwise I'll tell you a little bit where to go look for interesting things that I found interesting in this kind of discourse.
I'd be interested in hearing more about the game.
Sure.
I see the website, I just see a pretty small board. Sorry, maybe my sound's not coming through clearly. I'll try and move my phone. The game, how does the game work? How do you play it?
Great, thank you for your question, Al. The game works like this. There is a game master, like in Dungeons and Dragons, and is the one that plays the word, and there are the players around. There is a way to account things. Everybody can invent the thing they want. There is a scenario to be played, so you can decide what type of scenario. The game master proposes a scenario. There are 3 things people can do. Each turn is a turn game. So there is something on the table, and there are turns, and there is an economy and a way to decide things. So there are 3 things you can do. You can invest for gaining resources. There are 2 types of coins. Let's say a white coin, an entropy coin. There is a gray coin and a white coin. The white coin is energy, the energy, good karma, etc. The gray coin stands for entropy and dissipation and bad karma, let's say. So you can invent something in the scenario or outside the scenario, and me as a master or whatever masters finds the way to model it into the game. The second thing you can do is to invent something. So you can say, I would like to invent a better electric car, and there is a way to allow you to invent and see what you have done or not is successful or not. And a third thing is to call for an assembly and propose a law. This law can be local on the table, or can be a change of rules of the entire game. These are the 3 main components of every of Le Grand Jeu. It's called the Le Grand Jeu because Le Grand Jeu refers to the big game of which us as small people have to live by. It's the game of powers, let's say, and we try to play our little game nevertheless. So it's an ideological game. It has ideology in it. It's an excuse to talk philosophy as well. And we used it for many user cases, for communities, onboarding them in a common fair project. There's a project about basic income, to talk basic income, to talk energy, to talk permaculture, to talk about also we made it some with people that is part of the community here. We made it to find ways to talk about the pandemics during pandemics, so we played it also online. Bit more boring, of course, but it worked, and it was used in a project also with the Max Planck Institute to talk about energy. It can be learned by playing, so usually people start playing, and in one round they understood the rules, and then you explore the complexity of the stories that come out of it. It's very good for let's say for starting discourse and creating a group of people that wants to really put out what are their dreams and desire.
Along those lines, you're just if I were to focus on your part about the game master, does this require the game master doing a bunch of advanced preparation, or is it all stuff that spins up spontaneously on basically on the first turn?
It depends on the type of game master you find or you like to be. I'm mostly improvising. but I also try to give game mastering as soon as possible. In a workshop environment, I try to give up game mastering as soon as possible to one of the participants. To create a scenario is complex because you need to know a lot of stuff to make it fun and enjoyable. But if I use the game in modeling a situation for a client, let's say, then I would use the game in the function of creating the scenario that represents this situation. So it's a common effort to create the perfect scenario to play, for example, inside a project. And this allows you to create a common language and explore some possibilities very fast.
Okay, yep, I hear you. Sounds good. Sounds
Thank
interesting.
you all. Yeah. Somebody else has ideas, because I think it's 4 now. So I'm very happy that I managed to tell about my practices a bit, and I hope to have introduced it in a, let's say, open way. And to wrap it up, really, last thing I'd like to say, to wrap it up, I'm really looking for interesting situation to apply this methodology that can be useful for people in this space, and other persons to talk about the deepest implications of this philosophy. So please get in touch, reach out.
Thanks so much, Federico. I wanted to still get some links to dive deeper. Maybe you can send it to our chat, like super interesting. And I enjoyed so much this intersection of technology and art and philosophy. It's always, I think we have lots of interest around it in our groups. Yeah, thanks so much for your passion, your time, all the improvements and nice ideas we got today.
Thank you very much, Max. Have a good evening, and up.
Cheers. See you.
Ciao a
soon.
tutti. Have a good evening.
Hey guys, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao, Adam.